Good evening, everyone, and we welcome you to the April version of Night with the Experts. This is a monthly program by Nuclear Energy Information Service in Chicago, and it's an opportunity for you to have conversation, dialogue, ask questions of experts on nuclear matters that we bring to you each month. So we're very glad that you could join us tonight, Earth Month as it is, just having Earth Day this week. And we would also point out that at the end of this week, we have an anniversary. It happens to be the 39th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster. And we will be putting some links into the chat for you to take tonight of various YouTube shows and clips about the Chernobyl disaster. So make sure you save the chat before you leave us tonight. So I'm really pleased that we have a filmmaker and author with us tonight, Jill Murphy-Long, who will be speaking with you. And I'm going to turn this over to my colleague and board.
So good, I'm just listening to people.
And Boudart.
Okay.
Also, I would mention we are recording this, and I'd ask that you all need to go on mute if you're not going to be in dialogue soon. The chat will be turned off until we go to the question and answer phase, so you won't be able to communicate in chat either until Jill is finished with her remarks. So on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Jan and ask you to watch the chat later for the Chernobyl stuff. Jan, take it away.
Our speaker tonight is Jill Murphy-Long, and she's a distinguished filmmaker and a person who's written 5 books. She is involved with the Trojan nuclear power plant that has been closed in Portland, Oregon, and the one in New York, Indian Point, and Turkey Point in Florida. And she warns people about the dangers of these things. Her new book is Plutonium Skies, The Hidden Health Fallout from Nuclear Power, which is also her subject for her talk tonight. Jill remains devoted to aiding victims of the cancer clusters in her home state of Pennsylvania because she was there when the meltdown occurred at 3 Mile Island. And so she is very much involved in helping people in Pennsylvania deal with the problems that are still ongoing from the 3 Mile Island meltdown. Jill works hard as an activist, participating in anti-nuclear work, using the memes, Stop Nuclear Power, Go Green, and EPA, Do Your Job. One of the things I wanted to mention that she did that I think is very notable is that, and it illustrates the ignorance or the lack of education of even educators about nuclear power, because there was a relay in Portland going around the ISFAC at Trojan. Trojan has been closed, but of course, like all nuclear power plants, on the campus of the power plant, there still stands spent fuel casks. And there was a relay in school, the kids running around those casks, passing their relay thing around the cask, and then the next one would go around. And Jill pointed out to the people who were managing this that this was not a good idea, and that they were exposing these kids to radiation that they should not have been exposed to. So I think that was a very, very important kind of education, the kind of education that Jill is involved in. So I'd like to turn it over to Jill now and have her go ahead and present Plutonium Skies.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I really appreciate you taking time out of your evening to join all of us. So I have a presentation I'm going to show you in a minute, but the reason why I named my book that I'm writing, the narrative nonfiction, Plutonium Skies, is because and you're going on the journey with me. I've been studying nuclear power, trying to figure out what happened at 3 Mile Island and then the other hotspots around our country. And I didn't know plutonium-239 was a man-made substance. I didn't know It was in atomic bombs, all the nuclear reactors in the world. There's 440 right now operating. And I didn't know it was in the dry cast, as Jan was referencing. Once they decommission a nuclear reactor, they take the spent fuel rods, or other word for used, take the used fuel rods out, and they have to cool them in a swimming pool, looks like a pool, and then they move them into a dry cast. So that's our problem now. It's everywhere. So that's the name. So it's kind of a double entendre of plutonium skies. So let me show you what I put together. And if anyone wants a copy of this at the end of the evening, I'm happy to share. But yeah, so we're going to go through, and a lot of you are very educated on this subject matter, but some of you may not know, like I did not know. So we'll talk about the hidden health fallouts from nuclear power. And that's a pine cone, in case you're wondering. And that will come around at the end of my talk as to why I'm showing you a pine cone that's just starting to grow. So 3 Mile Island nuclear generating station. Some of them do identify who and what they are, some do not. So 3 Mile Island started in 1978. The next year, March 28th, 1979, I was only 15 years old. My brother and I were at track practice, which was only 12.33 miles as the bird flies from 3 Mile Island. We were outside. I was running hurdles, practicing. He was running the longer distances around the track, and we both ran relays. There's probably almost 100 kids on the track team, and we're all out there the day 3 Mile Island melted down. We went home to deliver the York Dispatch, and there was about 88 homes. So Mike and I split the delivery, and he'd go one way and I'd go to the other. This repeated again on Thursday and Friday. And then finally, Friday night, my mother insisted that we evacuated. So if you look at the photo here, there's a couple of bridges that go across the Susquehanna River. And the Susquehanna River at some points is a half-mile wide. And if you look in the distance, you can see the 4 cooling towers. They're almost 400 feet tall. So they dwarf the trees. They stand out, as my mother always called them, an eyesore. There's no steam coming out. It's been decommissioned. But Bill Gates and Microsoft has decided to rename it Crane Clean Energy Center. They're trying to wipe the history away, saying that nothing happened. So as I was reading about 3 Mile Island, I read the president's accident reports, about 170 pages, which they, after 250 depositions, and they spoke to the 4 gentlemen that were on the night shift that night when it melted down. They came up in October with a report saying that basically it was too big to fail, too cheap to meter, and finally, their super plan, as they call it, there was no harm to public health or safety. Well, flash forward to now, 46 years later, I have to disagree with them. I came home several times to Pennsylvania and held get-togethers in Middletown and York, the various counties surrounding 3 Mile Island, and met with many, many people who told me what they're suffering from, their various cancers and neurological diseases. And I first heard about this when I came home on my book tour, my second book, and I went out to lunch with 3 of my friends that were my brother's class, and they went around and around at the table going, "Oh, your boyfriend, he's gone. He died of leukemia. He didn't even hit 40. Your AP biology partner, brain cancer, prostate cancer, breast cancer, leukemia." And that was 2023. I was shocked. But again, I was living out in Colorado, living the good life, writing, teaching at a college, skiing every day. It was wonderful, but I just couldn't believe what was happening. So I started doing more research. I also found out that President Carter, who actually toured the control room, which was full of radioactive water and little yellow booties on Sunday, April Fool's Day, he actually wrote an executive order to have potassium iodide distributed. So more than 250,000 dosages were sent to Harrisburg, which is just up the river. So 3 Mile Island is barely 10 miles from Harrisburg. So that would be, speaking in film terms, camera left. So on the left side of the picture on the bridge. And you can see 2 airports too, very close, not a good idea. But they didn't distribute the potassium iodine, and potassium iodine basically stops or blocks. It fills up the thyroid gland. So then your thyroid, thinking that iodine 131, one of the radioactive isotopes that is released during a meltdown, your body doesn't absorb the bad stuff because it has this other potassium iodide in its body. But they decided not to distribute it because they felt it would lessen the public's confidence in nuclear power. So they shipped the supply to Arkansas later that summer. Now, since 9/11 and the towers coming down in New York City, Every single state that has nuclear power plant, nuclear reactors operating, they distributed potassium iodine every year for free. The other thing I found out about 3 Mile Island is, and this could be wrong, I have to dig a little deeper, but I was shocked that there's no dry casts. They basically stored the spent fuel rod, and they have to take the fuel rods out of the nuclear reactors every 12 to 18, 24 months. And then, like I said, cool it down in a cooling pool and then move it into a dry cast forever, because we still don't have a safe or long-term place to store all this nuclear waste from all these nuclear reactors. So only once it was decommissioned in 2019 did they finally make some cast and put it in there. Who knows what's going to happen now with, it's supposed to reopen in 2028. And I think it's a really bad idea. So I also note at the bottom here what some of the threats are: rising river levels, wildfires, and terrorism, with 2 airports close by. And one of my friends, Gary, who actually sent me his potassium iodine pills, he took a picture because he flew right over the cooling towers because he was coming home to Harrisburg, and that's the traffic route. You can't fly over Disneyland in Anaheim, but you can fly over a nuclear power plant. And this was in the last 10 years that he sent me this photo, so it's still current. I also, when I was back, Jamie Pop, who I played basketball with, she came around to some of the events, and the day I was up in Middletown, I said, I want to go see 3 Mile Island. I want to go up close and personal. So we drove over the bridge. We drove right up to the administration front doors. Nothing. They had 2 cement barriers in front of the front doors, so I couldn't go any further. But nothing, no security at the bridge. I got right on the island. Some guy came out and he goes, hey, you got my pizza? I'm like, no. I said, we want to take a tour. Jamie's freaking out. She's hiding in the car. She thought we are going to get arrested. He's, oh, we don't do that anymore. He goes, you have to call ahead and schedule a special appointment, but we can definitely, give you a tour. I said, okay, thanks. So we took some photos and left, but I could not believe that I could get that close. So that's 3 Mile Island. Here we are, the Murphy family. We lived in East York, about 13 miles due south of 3 Mile Island in Pen Oaks South, up on a hill. My mom passed in 94, heart issues. My dad, heart issues 20 years later. My little brother there got knocked down in a 7-year span with 3 different cancers, and well, he had a brain tumor first, and then he had basal cell carcinoma. Then he had thyroid cancer the same year I was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 2012. And then just last year, well, 2023, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. So what happens when we are exposed to iodine radiation, also called radioactive isotopes, also called, as I said before, iodine-131. The body thinks it's potassium, so it's absorbed through the thyroid gland. And if you search iodine radiation and cancers, the CDC, the NIH, the American Cancer Society, and also the Department of Veteran Affairs will give you a big long list of what is known, the causes of what cancers. So also there's cesium-137, which is known to cause, you have to say known to cause, cancers of the soft organs of the body, including the brain. Both Mike and I were very fortunate. Both of our tumors were benign. Still very scary to have brain surgery, but we're tough, we're Murphys, and we have always been athletes. My mother had an organic garden before that word was even coined in the 90s. So we have luck on our side, but we also have pretty good lifestyle and a pretty good diet. So I think that's what's helping us. And Mike's still here. He's still good. He's down in Florida. And my little sister, who's 6 years younger, she doesn't know. She's okay, but all of us are a little bit nervous. The other radioactive isotope that's released is strontium-90. If you go on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and go to the glossary, they call strontium-90 the bone seeker, because the body thinks it's calcium, so it's absorbed through the skin, and it causes, or is known to cause, bone and blood cancers like leukemia. And the problem with the exposure to iodine radiation, they used to say, well, low dose is okay. Well, the reality is we're finding that no dose is okay, and it's cumulative in the body. And the biggest kicker is that it presents decades later. So thus, when I first got sick, that was 33 years after the meltdown in 1979. And then most recently, 44 years after the meltdown in 1979. Michael's, unfortunately, his was only 26 years after the meltdown. So that's how they get away with it. and it damages the DNA. And again, if you do even just a Google search, or if you want to dive deeper and pull up books, you'll see what I'm saying. And the reason why I'm showing you the school here, this is where they actually, on Friday, March 30th, we got dismissed and sent home because 23 schools in the immediate area were closed. Pregnant women and their children were evacuated. So we did have some buses come down from Middletown, and they were here. So we're leaving, and they're trying to come in. The Red Cross is coming in. The National Guard's coming through. It was just chaos. And the bus drivers were yelling, keep the windows up. And it was a warm day. So of course, being teenagers, we put the bus windows down. Thus maybe why Mike and I got thyroid cancer. We don't know. But I came back to York to talk to people about what happened. And if you notice, it says York Learning Center. In the same letters, the same font, it uses a Central Senior High School. Well, in 2006, York Learning Center opened their doors to a student population from ages 5 to 21. And I got a tour because I was thinking of filming there. Nothing's changed. As you can see, anyone that went to this school will recognize it because this hasn't changed since I graduated in 1981. And the auditorium looks the same, the gymnasium, Doc Knox AP English class is the same. So I was just amazed. So I'm talking to the lady who was giving us the tour, and I noticed students. I go, who goes to school here now? And she's, oh, we service students with special needs. I'm like, for example, she's autism and Asperger's. So I was with my 6th grade teacher at the time, Peggy Carnahan. I turned to her after the lady walked around the corner. And I said, how old would these mothers be in 1979? And basically they were preteen and teenagers. So again, women and children, teenagers are more susceptible to iodine radiation. And then in more research, York is not a big town. York County is not that big. We have our own autism society, which is highly unusual. And then the other thing I discovered in working with people up closer to 3 Mile Island is Thong. It's like marathon, THON. Penn State does a 46-hour dance marathon. So the students get together and they dance all night, and they don't sit down, and they raise, it's amazing, millions of dollars. And they give money through the 4 diamonds, as you see at the bottom of the second card there. And the money originally just went to the 4 counties around 3 Mile Island, Cumberland County, Dauphin, Lancaster, and York. But I just looked at it recently, and now it seems they're giving money to any student. Actually, it's children. It's basically the Penn State students who have cancer themselves and or their siblings that have cancer. So it goes to the children to help them go through their cancer treatment. So that's rather shocking that we have that. So again, back to the children and pregnant women evacuated 3 days after. And, you know, we had a lot of press coverage, New York Times. I think Michelle Quinn, who was the youngest reporter, and she was with Linda's husband. I saw Linda's on the call, Dan. They were the team, WKBO, the radio station, with Captain Dave, who broke the story. Dave, who was covering traffic, was out driving around and noticed that the steam was not coming out of the towers, out of any of the towers. Unit 1 was down for changing out the fuel rods, but with no steam coming out, it was rather suspicious. So they called and found out that yes, indeed, there was a problem, and yes, indeed, they were trying to take care of it. So they broke the story. They also went around. I spoke to Pennsylvania State Corporal Officer Barry, and they went around and put these public notices on a lot in homes in about a 5-mile radius of TMI, which included some of York County. And it's just scary. It just tells, you know, don't evacuate yet, but if you have to evacuate, this is what you need to do. And of course, it was done on a typewriter because it was pre-computer days. And at the very bottom, if you could read it, it says, and not the bottom line, the one second to the bottom, we hope with God's help that this action will not be necessary. And I have one of the originals, and it's someone added that. So, you know, whoever had it made, someone added that. So it was just a very scary time. And what made it even more scary is that the China Syndrome, starring Jane Fonda and Michael Douglas, came out 2 weeks before we actually suffered the real meltdown at 3 Mile Island. So a little bit scary. Okay, I'm going to take you on a tour of what I've been discovering around our country, because yes, I'm still looking at 3 Mile Island. Yes, I want to help the people there. But I think if we all gather together and all stand up and speak loudly, they're going to hear what we know, the people that live around 3 Mile Island, we know. So Pilgrim is a nuclear generating station also. It started in 1972. I leave it open-ended after the year on purpose, because even though it's decommissioned and supposedly closed, if you look at the bottom picture of these two, they're 2-story high. Those are dry cast, well, I just call them dry cast, or they're containers. They contain the highly radioactive plutonium-239 nuclear waste. And since we have no central place to put it in the United States, and since nobody really wants it in their backyard, it's going to live on location. 3 Mile Island, it's going to stay on an island in the middle of Susquehanna, our drinking water. The canal that you see here goes from the nuclear power plant out to Cape Cod Bay. We used to go up there all the time on vacation. I am mortified when I found this out. So for 47 years, they were using this open air canal to pull water from the ocean, from the bay, to run it over the spent fuel rods inside of a nuclear reactor. And then they discharge it back into the bay 30 degrees warmer. Why? Well, because the fuel rods that they're trying to keep cool to avoid a meltdown are hot. So while the global nuclear industry keeps saying that nuclear power is safe, clean, and green, it's not. It's warming up our rivers. It's warming up our ocean. So, and of course, there's, as I have here, 62 dry casts of highly radioactive nuclear waste and 800 tons. It's owned by Holtec, and they're the ones that make these casts, but they don't even know if it's going to be able to hold what's inside for more than 100 years. So, and the good people of Massachusetts are fighting Holtec because they want to release radioactive water into the Cape Cod Bay. Lake Anna Park. It's a park. It's also a nuclear power plant. So you can see the aerial view. They dammed it. They made a reservoir. And on one shore is where the nuclear reactor is. You can see those two kind of like beach ball items underneath Lake Anna Park. And then the other photographs, obviously a beach. They also pull water from the lake and run it over the nuclear reactor fuel rods and then discharge it back into the lake. But it's only 14 degrees warmer. So there's a warm side of the lake and a cold side of the lake. And Amazon, just as Bill Gates or Microsoft is buying up his nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania, Jeff is down in Arizona. He just signed a $5 million. And when they say small modular, I put the word nuclear because they dropped the word nuclear. They say small modular reactors. They're not small. They even produce more nuclear waste than the traditional nuclear power plants. Again, here are people out on the water, fishing, boating, swimming, and there's 80 dry casts and over 1,500 tons of highly nuclear waste. Turkey Point. I have relatives that live down here. I'm very nervous for you. Opened in 1972. They have now, through the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which is the governing body of all nuclear reactors in the United States and nuclear waste sites, have extended for a total of 61 years running. I just can't fathom this. So what you're seeing here, they have also open air cooling canals, but each one is there's 32. They're each 5 miles long for a total of 160 miles of, maybe they say it's safe, they say it's not radioactive, but if you're running it over nuclear fuel rods and it's hot, a very hot environment, and they've had leaks. If you go and research, just type in Turkey Point leaks, Turkey Point accidents, Turkey Point incidents, because that's what the nuclear industry does. They make it sound benign. They use adjectives like it was a small leak or it was slightly radioactive. You can't use adjectives when you're describing scientific measurements. So that's where I get upset with them. And the fact that it's basically on an aquifer, which is the drinking water for more than 4 million people in South Florida. So I would advise reverse osmosis in your houses if you live down there. And the other problem with nature does not mix with nuclear power plants. Hurricanes come across this area, the ocean levels are rising, there's flooding, wildfires, and of course, terrorism. Because all of these 46 dry casts, they're mini Chernobyls. It's just not safe. And most of them are just sitting out in the open. They're not inside a building. This is over in France. France supposedly recycles or reprocesses plutonium. And there's an example of a pool. This is a cooling pool. So if you see those square, they're basically real 12 feet tall, roughly 12 feet tall canisters, and then up to 172 fuel rods. So there's a lot. And what's happening is there's so much, they're starting to stack it and overfill these pools. So you're putting in a really hot substance into the water gets hot, evaporates, they have to keep adding more water. So nuclear also is a water hog, not only to keep the nuclear reactor fuel rods cool while it's operating as a nuclear reactor, but then when they're cooling them down to put it into dry storage, it's still using a lot of water. So the real bummer about this La Hague, I'm not sure how to say this is a French word. It's on the English Channel, and the studies they've been doing, they're finding increase in leukemia in children, and because they're using the beaches and they're eating the seafood. So your skin can absorb iodine radiation. You can eat food that's been, they say contaminated. Let's really call it what it is. It's radioactive. So if you're eating food, if you're drinking the milk, if you're drinking the water, if you're eating the seafood, after Fukushima melted down in 2011, I went off all meat. I was eating seafood up until then, but I just can't. I have to really limit my exposure to any type of radiation based on my history of exposure. So it's what I'm seeing is the same stories repeating around the world. Great Lakes in Canada. Sorry, David and Jan, you guys are the hot spot, but you already know that. There's 60 nuclear power plants, 12 highly radioactive nuclear waste sites, and 10 uranium processing and mining sites. And this has been around since 1966, and it's not even a complete map. I could find numbers about 60,000 tons of radioactive waste. And one thing I wanted to point out, you probably have noticed in the news lately, a lot of reports are coming out saying more and more young people are getting cancer. It used to be considered an old person's disease, but now under 40, there's so many people, men and women, getting cancers of the digestive tract, breast cancer, all kinds of cancers. Case in point, Mark Ruffio, born in 67, 34 years later, he was diagnosed also with a brain tumor, and it left him deaf in his left ear. Selma Blair has MS. Christina Applegate has MS. Bradley Cooper's family lived outside Philadelphia, about 100 miles from 3 Mile Island. He died of lung cancer. Wanda Sykes, who's a comedian, is a breast cancer survivor. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. President Carter even also had, I think it was melanoma that metastasized into liver and brain cancer. Thank God they saved him, but it's just the reporters that showed up. I have a list of 15 reporters that I know who came to 3 Mile Island, ground zero, were there drinking the food, drinking the water, eating the food, and they also have passed of cancer too soon. So what can we do instead? Well, we could use hydropower, we could use wind and solar, and then kinetic, we're energy. So there's a lot of other things we can do besides nuclear power. Rocky Flats is in Colorado. During World War II, there was quite a few atomic cities. Trisha, my new friend and author, is also on the call today. She flew up to Portland recently, and we just shot a short for her forthcoming book, Then Comes the Summer Snow. And it's about Hanford, which is one of the Manhattan sites, like this site is. Rocky Flats was also part of the Manhattan Project. So was Brookhaven National Laboratory. And I saw Carl's in the call tonight too. He was instrumental in stopping nuclear from being built on Long Island. Oak Ridge down in Tennessee, another atomic city. And then of course here in Colorado. So they processed plutonium to make the atomic bomb. And flash forward to today, they decided it was a super fund. And even the word super fund is an oxymoron, because super sounds good. Fun sounds like it's better, but super fund, it means it's radioactive, it's contaminated. So in 2017, and they do this a lot, they make these super fun sites a wildlife refuge or a national park, like they did with Hanford, or like they did in Trojan in my state now where I live in Oregon. They make it a state park. Or Bikini Atolls, they made it a World Heritage Site. So there's a lot of women in particular that are activists. And this woman, started plotting. She was diagnosed with breast cancer pretty young and started plotting this. So this is just the map from 2019. I need to follow up with her and see what else is happening. But it's right next to, here's Denver, and Rocky Flats is over here to the left, to the west of it. So there's still radioactive dust. And now what they're trying to do, Jeff did a movie called Half-Life Memory, and Tiffany's really active on the Rocky Flats group on Facebook. They're trying to put in a mountain greenway. So come hike, come bike, bring the kids, bring the school buses, and no. Luckily, there's people there saying no. And Jeff's movie, which is now playing, he's taking out the steamboat where I used to live. He's going to be showing that next month out there. Richard Miller maps. This man actually plotted all of the above ground, the 100 bombs that were detonated above ground about 60 miles north of Las Vegas with the wind currents. So that's what you're looking at. That's where all the radioactive isotopes, iodine radiation, went when they blew it up. And in Las Vegas, they actually celebrated this. They made atomic cocktails and they had viewing parties on the roof in Las Vegas. These people are way too close. They probably didn't last very long. It was just tragic. The good news is several female physicians and their husbands and neighbors got together and started what was called the baby tooth survey. Because as I said before, strontium is the bone seeker. So it shows up in your teeth, in your bones. So when the children's teeth fell out, they started collecting them and testing them for strontium. And guess what they found out? The children had strontium 90 in their bodies. So there's a really good movie. It's called Silent Fallout. The director's from Japan. He speaks some English, but we get on Zoom and he has a translator. So he's been going around the United States and around the world showing this movie. And there's one scene in the movie where they show the doctor, the woman that is spearheading this project. She gets a phone call. The little boy answers the phone. And he's like, "Mom, it's President Kennedy." And she's like, "Yeah, right." And it was. He called to thank her for her work and he banned atomic testing. So that was wonderful. But 1999, we tried to roll out more of a comprehensive nuclear test ban treaty, and it was only approved by 77 nations, but we rejected it, Russia, Israel, etc. So that's not good. And then all these people are called downwinders. There was a Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, RECA, and it identified pretty much the states right around Las Vegas and gave them some money, but they had to prove it. It just expired. So it goes against the latent nature of being exposed, even though this was, 1951 to 1990, most of them later in 1992 were underground, but still gets in the water, still gets in our soil, still gets in our food, and still gets in our body. Palo Verde. This was the largest nuclear power plant until they just built a new one in Georgia. So now Georgia wins. They're the biggest. But this is ludicrous, in my opinion. We're in the desert. And Arizona gets hot. As I said here, I was doing some research for this PowerPoint presentation. Their reactors heat up to over 600 degrees, and their weather is on the average over 100 for long periods of time. And with climate change, it's getting worse. So how do you keep something hot where it's already hot there? Plus the dry casts, most of them are just sitting outside and they use conventional cooling systems to keep them cool. How do you keep what's inside, and they have to keep it around 125 degrees. How do you keep it 125 degrees when the temperatures outside with the blazing sun keeps going up and up and up? It's the biggest problem here. They do have these, what's called it's a dust storm, a mile-high dust storm called Habooz. And they shut down airports, they shut down highways, they shut down nuclear reactors. Wildfires are also a problem. But in the desert, we have solar, we have wind, kinetic. There's so many other renewable energy sources we can use instead of nuclear. San Onofre State Beach. Yes, it's a beach. And yes, there's nuclear waste right on the beach. You can see it right there. They started putting this on the beach, but they realized the ground table water, the water beneath for people, the drinking water, they would hit it if they put these dry canisters down too deep. So that's why they're sticking out of the ground. So it's a park. They always make them parks. There's also a 1.1 mile long pipe that releases what's called liquid batches of treated water into the Pacific Ocean. So Surfrider Foundation and the magazine got really upset and said, you can't be poisoning us, our seafood, our seaweed, our beaches, our water. And they said, well, we'll call Woods Hole and we'll do a study. So they did. But if you read the study, and if you read who financed the study, he's in the business of storing nuclear waste. So he's, of course, not going to find anything. So they didn't test at the mouth of the pipe. They just tested water out there. They didn't test the seaweed. They didn't test the seafood. They didn't test the sand on the beach. But guess what's coming in 2028? They are going to sponsor the surfing competition south of this, a beach a little bit further south, walking distance basically, called Trestles. So they should not. And if there's a problem, a wildfire, rising ocean level, it's only 100, they're saying only 100 yards now from the beach because the ocean levels keeps rising. Tsunami, it's on an earthquake line. It's just crazy. So if something happens, 9.6 million in LA and south 3.2 million. How do you evacuate that many people? Over in the beautiful Pacific, we also bombed a lot. There's in this ruined dome, there's this much radioactive materials. The soldiers came over. They were sold. I've been speaking to quite a few of them. They're on Facebook, and they were sold on a vacation to the South Pacific. So they went around and picked up pieces that were from the explosions, from the detonation of the atomic bombs, and put it in this dome, which is now leaking and cracking and exposing more people to it. And it wasn't just us, it was the US, it was the UK, it was the French as well. But what's kind of disconcerting is that there's quite a few deep sea diving companies that promote deep sea diving of these ships that were bombed. And it's radioactive, even on their websites. They're like, well, we bring our own food and water, just don't eat the coconuts on the islands. So Bikini Islands, Marshall Islands, they're all radioactive. And Paul Allen, founder of Microsoft, he was really into the study of the ocean and such, but unfortunately he died of lymphoma in 2009. He came over here a lot to deep sea dive. He loved diving down to see the bombed ships. Disney. All right, after World War II, and I'm an advertising person. It's where I started in college, ran my own ad agency in Los Angeles and had clients all over the country, Japan and Italy. So I'm a wordsmith. So I know when they're trying to fool us because I used to try to get people to buy more things than they really needed. So the atomic industry knew they needed a name change. They knew they had to rebrand themselves to disassociate with atomic bombs and how do we use this power after war for good. So, of course, President Eisenhower came out with Atoms for Peace in 1953. So after World War II in the 1950s, there was a big push to sell nuclear as clean, safe, and green. So they wrote a children's book. They hired Walt Disney. He wrote Our Friend the Atom. Then ABC joined forces and financed his amusement park in Anaheim with Tomorrowland and also aired his TV show called Our Friend the Atom. If you want, I'll send you a 53-second clip from the TV show. It's basically they show a genie and he's saying, once you let, nuclear or atomic out of the bottle, you can never put it back in, but it's great because it's so good for everybody. So it's not. And then, of course, after Chernobyl melted down in 1986, the big thing now is disaster tourism. So people actually go over to Chernobyl and they wear hazmat suits and they wear dosimeters and they run around and take pictures. And then the same thing happened in Fukushima, but a little more positive. They're calling it hope tourism, but it's the same thing, different name. Your exposure is cumulative. I wouldn't advise that vacation. Hanford's in my backyard. It's too close. In 2019, Purex, and that is not a detergent. It stands for plutonium uranium extraction tunnel. So in their brilliance, they built, this is railroad tracks. And this is huge. It's almost, I want to say it's almost half the size of a Rhode Island. That's how big it is. And this is just, here's Washington, and it looks tiny. It's not a very good picture, but it's gigantic. You can go up there now and take a 4-hour bus tour. And it's, of course, it's a National Historic Park. They make them parks. And you can tour all of this. Of course, you're going to sign paperwork that says you're being exposed to radiation, but don't worry. They tell you it's a low dose is okay. But in 2019, they had railroad tracks that they just built wooden beams covered in dirt, and it had plutonium on it. They just buried it. Well, it got so hot that this hole fell through. So I remember hearing this on the news. I was mortified. So they came in with 53 trucks of clean dirt, and the people that were standing out there, no hazmat suits, no Geiger. I mean, they were walking around with Geiger counters, but none of the workers were wearing dosimeters, and they filled it back up, and they said everything's fine. A Japanese survivor from the World War II came over, and he did the tour, took photos, asked a lot of questions. And he went to the local high school, Richland. And he was rather mortified because their mascot is the bombers. And what's painted on the floor of the gymnasium? A mushroom cloud. So he thought it was very disrespectful. Trojan. This is in my backyard. This is what Jan was talking about when we first came on. So Trojan was a nuclear power plant, the only one that Oregon had. Unfortunately, 2 universities here have operating nuclear reactors on campus for training purposes, and it's regulated by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, which I don't understand how that can exist, because we passed a law in 1980 saying no nuclear, but they're there. So when they imploded the cooling tower, which was not a good idea either, because it's right on the Columbia River, Sauvie Island's downstream, it's a big produce island for Portland. They sent out, and I say PG&E runs this park. They sent out a PDF, a 22-page PDF saying, oh, if you were here witnessing, and a lot of people on both sides of the Columbia River, Washington and Oregon came out to watch the implosion. You can Google it and see it on, or ask me and I can send you a link on YouTube. And it was wild, just collapsed down, but it also released radioactive isotopes. And they list in the report, whoops, sorry, but they tell you after the fact. So my husband is a big runner. My daughter's a big runner. So I knew about this race. It's a relay. Most cross-country races are about 3 miles, maybe 3 miles. This is a relay where each kid runs 3 miles, and there's a team of 4, so they do it, up to 10 miles. So and it's middle school and high school. So it's not only the teen, athletes, but also their parents, and then they bring their siblings, which are younger. And these are the dry casts. There's 32 of them, 7,660 tons of highly radioactive waste, and there's nothing. You can walk right up to these. They have a barbed wire fence and some guy driving around in a pickup truck. There's no guy, and this is the biggest problem. If they keep saying it's clean, safe, and green, then put Geiger counters here. And San Onofre did put Geiger counters out, but there's 4. They read them, and then once a month they tell you what was released. No, put it online. Let me check it online before I come up there, because they invite you to come up and play Frisbee golf. They invite you to come up and go fishing. They invite you to come up and reserve a pavilion and have a party there. But they tell us it's fine, but is it? These things are cooled down by conventional air. And we're getting really hot days up here in Portland now as well, over 100 for weeks at a time. So the good news is I called PG&E. I wrote them letters. I said, this is not safe. I'm a mother. My daughter runs. My husband's a running coach. This is not safe. And the guy said, well, I'll write something up. You can share it with everybody. And I said, okay. Then he sent back this fluff piece. Said nothing about radiation. It just said it's safe. So then I called up the 3 schools that sponsored this, the athletic directors of the various high schools this year. And they told me it's been canceled. They're no longer hosting this race. So yay, small success. Nuclear disasters. The industry actually rates them on 1 to 7, 7 being a major. Obviously, Chernobyl in 1986 in Ukraine was major. Fukushima's triple meltdown that was hit by a tsunami and an earthquake was major. And then it goes down 6, 5, 5, 4. England's is also wind scale, and it's also, they have Shutterfield. Whoops, they've had same place, different name, more problems. 3 Mile Island was originally only a 3, but then after a while they weren't able to get in there until 5 years later to put cameras to visually confirm there was a hole 2.5 feet by 5 feet in the side of the nuclear reactor. So then when they discovered that, they bumped it up to a 5. But my question is, what were we exposed to for those 5 years when you kept on telling us there's been no harm to public health or safety? So the bottom line is nuclear power produces radioactive waste forever. The half-life of plutonium-239 is 24,100 years. Threats to nuclear power. We all know that climate crisis is not getting any better. This first photograph, the top left, is Fukushima. They had actually taken down one of the mountain walls to access the seawater in order to cool down. They had 6 nuclear reactors. Only 3 were completely annihilated. So when the tsunami hit and the earthquake, this is what happened. To the picture on the right top, this is in Nebraska. They have flooding. And look at the nuclear power plant. Not a good idea. Florida, we all know Florida gets a lot of hurricanes and they crisscross. Turkey Point is right about here, where this pink line is. So that was Ian hit that one. And this is San Onofre again in Southern California. Here is the 5 freeway. You're looking south. So I lived in Southern California for 19 years. I was riding my bike, raising money for Team in Training, which raises money for children with leukemia and lymphoma. I had done so many 100-mile bike rides. I think I counted 10 when I was getting ready for this presentation. And several times we would ride from Cal State Fullerton, where I was going to college, down to San Diego, right by this. Because we're not on the freeway. There's roads that we can access as cyclists. But I had no idea when I was in college. I was riding by a nuclear power plant. I had no idea when I was 15 in Pennsylvania what a nuclear power really meant, to have it as a neighbor in your backyard. And what you're looking at here is a wildfire. And we just had the wildfires up in LA in January. We burn a lot out here on the West Coast. It does not go well with nuclear power plants. So the good news is there are people making a difference. There are authors writing books. Michael Gray wrote The Warning. He came to 3 Mile Island. He was on ground zero with many other regional, national, and international reporters. He was freelancing for the Rolling Stones. He died of a heart attack. Libby has a podcast called Nuclear Hot Seat. She wrote a book. She lived 1 mile away. Kelly wrote Welcome to Shirley. This talks about, and Carl knows Kelly very well, this talks about what happened with Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island. Again, cancer. So it's a different place, same story. Refuge talks about the downwinders from Las Vegas. This particular author, Terry Tempest Williams, is based in Utah. And what's ironic is different people gave me these books and told me about these movies over the years. So it's a really interesting puzzle that I'm putting together. Radium Girls, that was a Broadway show and also a film that you can see now. Full Body Burden is about Rocky Flats, Colorado. First We Bombed New Mexico. Lois wrote this movie and is now circulating it. She might be coming to Portland. We all know Oppenheimer. My movie that I wrote, Plutonium Skies, picks up where Oppenheimer leaves off and starts in the 70s through current day. William wrote this movie, The Conquistador. It's about the Hollywood fallout. 200 people, they were filming in St. George, which is north of Las Vegas in the Nevada test site. Out of the 200 people on this set, like half of them had cancer and died, including John Wayne. Downwind, another Downwinder movie. Mark lives here in Portland. It's about Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. And then Silent Fallout, it's the movie about, as you can see, the baby teeth study. So what to do? I think 43 cancer ribbons are entirely too many. And the pictures you see here, these are both from the event they do in Pennsylvania called Thon, Thon. This is a Penn State football player. His daughter had cancer. She's okay now. Thank God. The money that we do raise for when we cycle, run, there's actually all kinds of events. You can kite surf, you can surf. There's all these things you can do to raise money for cancer research. So she's okay now. This little girl, I don't know, but this is what we're seeing. Children with cancer, baby with cancer. So here's the information. You can call up the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. You can email them, you can call them, you can write to them and tell them you don't want nuclear in your backyard. And we have to turn on green renewable energy now. And we have to move in that direction. I went to DC in 2022. We made these signs that are 12 feet tall and they had them on rollers. So each letter moved by itself. I got 12, I called up DuPont and ordered these hazmat suits. They sent me samples. So I stuffed 12 of them with paper towel and stuck them on 12-foot poles. And then on the front and back, you know, the nuclear fallout shelters you see on buildings, it's yellow and black and it says nuclear fallout shelter. Well, we took that symbol, put it on the chest and the back of these headless men, and then put the sticker "not in my body." So 12 of us carried those around. And we protest. We just said, you know, EPA, do your job. And then I also sat down with 6 different senators to try to talk to them about what I'm talking to you about and why we need to go green now. And one guy fell asleep in the talk. And I, you know, kind of woke him up. I'm like, you need to hear this. I go, he goes, oh, I have a new baby. I'm really tired. I'm so exhausted. I'm like, that's exactly why you need to hear this. You're a new dad and you have a baby. They're leaving this for you. They're leaving this for your children. So what can we do? There are so many other places in the world using safe, green, and clean renewable energy now. The first photograph looks like a waterfall. That's Nepal. They actually, so rather than doing huge, massive dams like we're guilty of in Oregon, they do micro applications. So they capture the water to give energy to the local village. Same thing's happening over in Italy. There's a beautiful water bottling company, sparkling mineral water. They use the river, not only to bottle the water, but also for energy. The picture up here that looks kind of like a big lagoon going out. So Scotland, Northern Europe is trying to develop some type of lagoon that you put out there so you can bike, you can hike or walk, bike, fish, but underneath it, it's tidal. So the thing moves and captures the energy of the ocean and then gives the energy to the local communities. I think it's brilliant. Rather than what we do in New York City, we just toss a subway bus into the water saying, well, it's a house, it's habitat for the fish. No, if you do something like this, now everyone benefits. In Australia and also in the University of Michigan, they're trying to develop and are developing transparent solar windows. So we can put them on the skyscrapers. You can put them in the windshields of cars. There's other countries using solar on tarmacs, solar on railroad stations, on the tracks. Wind energy, this little, they call it a traffic turbine with the buses going by. So it's a combo solution. You have a solar panel, and I know we have to make those more green. We really need to focus on developing products that are green, safe, and clean for us and the planet from cradle to grave. But they rely on sun, and then this thing spins around. They call it kind of an egg beater. It just spins around as traffic goes by. So it's practical, it's site specific, it makes sense. This man walking, this is kinetic energy. We are kinetic energy. If we could wire all the gyms around the world, people on their Stairmasters, on their bikes, on their rowing machines, even if they just charge their own phone, we would be making energy that's clean. And then lastly, here, Iceland is our hero. They got off the oil grid in the 70s, and they rely on geothermal to heat their offices and homes. So what to do now? It's up to us to prove it. If they can say it's safe, clean, and green, I can say they caused cancer and neurological diseases. So we are looking at testing fir trees, leaves, and soil. And the reason being is that in my neighborhood, in my old childhood house, my house and the house across the street, and the houses on both sides, the backyard used to flood every spring. The TV room of my brother's room, and then across the street, the Williams's downstairs area where we played pool and watched TV and all that, their backyard. And then so the creek would go into a culvert in my backyard. Springtime, it would flood through the house. And then it would go in the culvert underneath the street. We sat on the curb, folding the newspapers for 6 years. Mike and I delivered newspapers for that long. And then it would go into Michelle's house and then pop out in the backyard. There's something still in that soil. There are 26 diagnoses of cancer and neurological diseases and brain tumors and brain cancer in those homes. So I petitioned the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease, and they denied it. I tried to reach out to EPA and the CDC, just deny. They discount what we say, discount our diagnoses, and deny. So we were trying to do that. So if you know anyone in the 4 counties surrounding 3 Mile Island, I'd like to talk to them. So we'd like to do that this year. And then I started JML Advocates when I went back to Pennsylvania the first time in 2015. So that's it. That's a lot. Thanks for sticking with me. Oh, wait, I have to tell you one more thing. I wrote myself notes. I got a letter through United Healthcare, and it came in the mail, and it said, the American Dental Association is no longer requiring us to use lead aprons when you get dental x-rays, so don't expect that. And earlier in December, unfortunately, I blew my ACL. I still act like I'm 14. And I had to get a new ACL. So, and I've had two before. I'm a skier. I've been skiing since I was 16. And I raced in college and all that stuff. So comes with the territory. So I had never had an x-ray after surgery. So, they pull you out after surgery, you're groggy. And this woman comes in because I have to take an x-ray of your knee. I'm like, it's a soft tissue repair. Why? No. She's, we have to make sure we got the screws in the right place. I'm like, so I'm all out of it. So I'm fighting her. I'm like, no. And she did it. I said, well, I need a lead apron. And she goes, oh, we discontinued those in 2022. So what the global nuclear industry is doing is they're realizing cancer rates are climbing. They're trying to raise the acceptable level of what we are exposed to, iodine radiation. So if they take away the lead aprons when you get your dental x-ray, or even for pregnant women, they're not suggesting, it's still iodine radiation. So now what they're trying to do is muddy the waters. Okay, you're exposed to iodine radiation. We recognize that, but we don't know if it came from the nuclear meltdown or the leak, or maybe from dental x-rays. So they're just trying to smoke and mirror the whole thing. So the biggest problem, no long-term or safe plan. And the last thing is distance is your friend. The further you can live away from a nuclear power plant, the better, because on a their daily operation releases iodine radiation into our community. And on their website, on the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, if you ask them what a safe distance is, they say 10 miles or more. The reality is it's as far as you can be. So distance is your friend. Do you have any questions? And these are the pills that you can pick up every year to stop thyroid cancer and disease. Didn't work for me.
All right. Thank you, Jill, for a very, very personal presentation and a very informative one as well. When we transition to the next portion of the evening, if you have any links that you want to share, you might consider putting those in chat, and we'll make sure that the chat gets sent around at the end of the evening. So folks, we now will move into the discussion and question and answer period. I will remind you that this is being taped. So if you don't want to appear on tape, we recommend you turn off your camera. But we will make available at the end of the session tonight the chat that will be sent out to all of you who registered for the event. And for those who would like it, send us an email at neis@neis.org. We will later make the Zoom link available prior to this getting up on YouTube, because the event will be posted on YouTube. So again, thank you, Jill, for a terrific presentation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jan now, who's going to describe what we're going to be doing next. And the chat is now open, so people can put information in the chat. I would like some feedback, though. I tried putting the links to the Chernobyl stuff in there, and it seems to have frozen my chat. So if it does not appear there, I will make sure that will be sent out with the chat information later tonight as well. So if you don't see the Chernobyl YouTube links, let me know, and I'll send it out later. Okay, Jan, the show is yours.
Thank you so much, Jill. That was a really fascinating presentation. And I think the audience was very lucky to have been here. I just want to say that when you ask a question, you're allowed one question and one follow-up. And we'll try to get around to everybody. If we get around to everybody and you have another question, then you can ask us, you can go in for a second go around in your questions. So I'm very glad that Jill explained about those hazmat suits that she stuffed. That was a wonderful action. So if you don't mind, I would like to call on Kristen Schrader-Frechette first, for the simple reason that I read her paper that she wrote in 2016, and you'll have to forgive me for this introduction to Ms. Schrader-Frechette, because she wrote this paper in 2016. It could have been written today. It was about a nuclear renaissance. She divided the fuel chain into 13 parts, explaining how the NRC or the industry can get away with saying that the footprint of a nuclear power plant is so small because they take one or two of the 13 parts and say this is the footprint, when there's 13 different footprints. And if you add them all up, the carbon footprint of nuclear power is not small. I went to a thing today where it's just above coal. Well, coal is about twice as big, but anyway, I do want to call on Miss Schrader-Frechette first, if you don't mind, and because she did have her hand up. Kristen, what is your question?
Hi, thanks so much. Yeah, I actually I've got, I don't know, 3 or 4 books. I've got 18 books, but I think about 4 of them are on nukes. The most recent shows that nukes are absolutely no solution to climate change. And I think I published that one with Oxford. Most of them were with Oxford. I think I published that one maybe 10 years ago. I can't remember the years because I work so much, but the focus tonight is on Jill. And Jill, I want to thank you so much, because after all you've been through, given your courage and what's happened to your loved ones, for you to fight, all I can say is bless you and thanks for all that you do, because this is the way change comes about. And you do a really good job of speaking to people. So thank you, thank you, thank you. That was really good. I have a caution here because I want to win this battle and I don't want it to go on. And I've been writing about nukes ever since I got my PhD. I've been writing about them since the late 1970s. So I want this battle to stop. So just a quick caution. We've got to be very, very, very careful assuming that anybody who had any exposure to ionizing radiation has a cancer that might be attributable to ionizing radiation, because the bad guys, I don't really believe they're bad guys. I just believe they're misguided by money. But at any rate, they will point out to you, as any good scientist will, that first of all, virtually all thyroid cancers in the United States, especially for those of us who were little kids in the 1950s and the 1960s, came from above ground weapons testing. And the National Academy concluded that, National Cancer Institute. So TMI and various other exposures could be part of it. So that's part of the problem. The other part of the problem, as you correctly said, is we're in a sea of ionizing radiation. Background radiation, back when I first started writing in the late 1970s, was 1.7 millisieverts. Today, it's 6.2 millisieverts. So background radiation has increased massively because of what we've doing. So that makes it very, very difficult to tie particular cancers to TMI, because the radiation is cumulative. We've got so much from weapons testing. We've got so much from background radiation. The other problem is every kid born in the United States is born with at least 400 chemicals that we all know of, all of which are carcinogens. And so I just don't want you to ever say anything that can make yourself an easier target for these people who are going to try to shoot you down. Now, a quick question, because I've been doing other things and I haven't kept up with TMI, about which I've written a good bit. Who's restarting TMI in 2028? And did Musk abandon his idea about restarting TMI? And is that the TMI reactor that had the melter? Is it one of the others or what? So
and there's other people here on the call from 3 Mile Island, or from the area. So what I understand, Microsoft has signed an agreement to restart unit 1, which did not melt down. Unit 2 was the one that melted down in 1979. That's destroyed.
Okay.
You can't fix it. It's broken. But unit 1,
Right.
they just decommissioned in 2019. So that's what I'm understanding. Linda, are you on the call? Are you here? There's a lot of people. Maria's here. She's from Middletown. Do you guys know anything else about what's happening? Well, I can get back to you. If you want to email me, I can.
Yeah.
Eric,
Thanks.
yeah, Eric Epstein, who runs TMI Alert, has been very active. He'll have a better handle what's going on. So I can send him a quick email and find out for you.
Right. Thanks so much. That's really scary that that's happening. The other thing I wanted to say, there is some good dosimetry on TMI, and the best dosimetry done on TMI that actually showed the cancers was by Steve Wild.
Right.
And I don't want to take time now, but he definitely showed cancer increases. And the people really mucked up the science when they did TMI studies. And I won't go into all the mistakes they made, but Steve Wild, W-I-L-D, he's now dead, unfortunately. So,
Right.
okay.
Well,
Thank you for all the good you do.
Oh, thank you so much, Kristen. It was really wonderful to have you here, and last month with Mark also. Okay, we'll call on Carolyn Kroom. Carolyn, what is your question?
I wanted to say that I'm going to send in the next minute or two into the chat a link to a meta-analysis of worldwide studies showing significantly higher risks for a few cancers, including thyroid cancer and leukemia. And Deanna Edwards, who's also on this webinar, alerted me to it, and the only thing I don't understand in the meta-analysis, and I think it's about 175 studies, and this would be would be studies among residents living within about 19 miles of nuclear power plants, and then also higher risk for mesothelioma for nuclear plant workers, and also higher risk for I think heart conditions for nuclear plant workers. But anyway, I just wanted to so this would be the day in, day out exposure to radionuclides of people living near the nuclear power plants. I thought that might be of interest to everyone in this group, in this webinar. But the question I had, and please forgive me, Jill, the very last thing that you were talking about the study of the tree rings and leaves and soil. I think I was reading while you were talking, reading your slide while you were talking, and I wasn't sure what group is it the University of Arizona that is doing this study, or who? I guess I wanted to clarify that. And I should also say my husband worked within 15 miles of the 3 Mile Island during the accident, and so I just had personal connection to all the things that you were saying, and thank you for speaking. So anyway, I guess just wanted to know who was doing that study.
Yeah, so it's through the University of Arizona. There's 2 doctors there that have been they go to cancer clusters when people get discounted and discredited, saying there's nothing happening here. So they go and do the soil test to show that there's still strontium-90 and cesium-137 and potentially plutonium-239 still, because in a fir tree, it's easy to get a core sample. It's about the size of a pencil. They just go into the tree. And if it has to be older than 50 years, because we're looking at 46, 47 years after TMI, and they test the tree to see if it has any radioactive isotopes. We can also look at the leaves, and we can also look at the soil, perhaps in my childhood backyard. So that's what they're doing. And these gentlemen have been doing this for 25 years plus. I can send you the link, Caroline. I have your email, don't I?
Yes, you do. Thank you so
I'll
much.
send you the presentation, and you can see who these gentlemen are. And if you go on the link, it actually, you can click and see their resumes or their CVs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for your question, Carolyn. Now I'm going to call on Tammy Thatcher. She is a mechanical engineer that's worked at INL, the Idaho National Labs, and she produces a newsletter called Environmental Defense Institute. And so she's a very well-informed person. And so ask your question, Tammy.
Hi. I looked into 3 Mile Island a couple of years ago and wrote several newsletters. And at the time of 3 Mile Island, I wasn't studying it. I was actually in high school. But from the time of 3 Mile Island, half of the nuclear community in Idaho Falls was studying some aspect of 3 Mile Island. I was never interested in it, avoided it for a long time. But when I did finally start looking at it, I was pretty shocked at the amount of disinformation. It really rivals the JFK assassination.
Yeah.
If you really understand it. And the monitoring that went on, they would actually call in and give a verbal on what their instruments were finding. And then conveniently, it's not really documented. It was a very small group of people who wrote, here's what we released, and then everybody else parroted that very narrow answer, which was inadequately monitored. The instrumentation at the facility was pegged out, was off the paper charts. It's a travesty. The point I want to make is it's so important to understand that people were harmed at 3 Mile Island much, much more than officialdom admits. And the epidemiology that's been done, the only decent epidemiology was by Stephen Wing. It's W-I-N-G, Chapel Hill. And it wasn't based on dosimetry. It was based on the wind isopleths. No actual dose known, but the distinction of how the cancers were higher, where the deposition was higher, tracked. Even though they did not know what the doses were, but they knew where more of the stuff landed or flew by. And so looking at what Stephen Wing wrote, you're not looking at what officialdom endorses, which was to say the elevated cancers were due to radiophobia. But the point I want to make, the question is, if folks still don't, even people who are very anti-nuclear, still do not have an understanding of the health impacts, even when there's no accident. And so this meta-analysis is important. I'll try to look for that. But there are books by Jay Gould, a statistician who studied breast cancer rates and how they changed once nuclear power plants opened within 50 miles of living within 50 miles of a nuclear plant. He studied how breast cancer rates doubled, tripled once you were living near a nuclear power plant. So it's not every type of cancer, but it's evidence at 50 different nuclear plants. And it's important. And then I point out what Professor Chris Busby of the UK found about the study, 65,000 US naval personnel, that with very low doses and very low dose rates and meticulous monitoring by the Navy, that those personnel they should have had undetectable elevated cancer rates compared to everybody else. They had 9 times the incidence of cancer. compared to the US statistics. So the nuclear industry relies on a health protection model that does not correctly predict the cancers, let alone the heart disease, let alone the birth defects, and lower learning rates. And I think the anti-nuclear community really often is buying officialdom's story that the doses from these plants are low. It's not true. Even the doses from dry storage, the neutron dose, the activated materials they're creating in the air, the people in the anti-nuclear community are not understanding the full adverse health impacts from nuclear industry, even when there's no accident. So I challenge everybody here and the speaker to try to help everybody better understand the issue. And so this is, for Jill, helping people. You've really pointed it out and done a wonderful job, but people are still going to think, oh, I don't have a problem if they don't melt it down. You do. And even the TMI epidemiology had to acknowledge, well, the cancer rates start increasing as soon as you opened Unit 1. And we had to.
You know something, Tammy, we need to kind of pull.
I-
Tammy was our
I-
expert a couple of months ago. She was in Jill's spot a couple of months ago. I hope you'll forgive me for interrupting.
Yes, I talked
because
too long.
I really appreciate your bringing up the Busby thing and, mentioning that you don't have to have an accident. And that's also brought out enormously in Silent Fallout. And anyway, thank you, Tammy.
you.
And I apologize for interrupting. I'm going to call on Jill because she seems to be responding. Jill, oh yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Tammy. Yes, I agree. And I'm still learning as I dive deeper. I do want to share with you, and if anyone wants to read this, so Al Keener was one of the radiation technicians that came down. And he even admit in this memoir that he wrote, because they were supposed to bring in people from Brookhaven, where he came from, Long Island, DC, and Las Vegas. And they finally just brought them down. They flew into TMI in a Coast Guard chopper, and the radiation alarm went off because they flew over the stacks, and the pilot freaked out and set the copper down really quick. So when I spoke to him, I said, I actually called him up because I read his paper. I said, were you running the Geiger counters? How much radiation did you go through? And he's like, oh, that would have been a good idea. So these guys, they didn't know the area. They were getting the paper maps from the gas stations in Pennsylvania. Anyone who lives there knows a lot of back roads, and you can get lost easily. They didn't know where they were going. They had the media chasing them around, because the time they got there and got going, it was Thursday, and then they evacuated women and children and then closed down schools. It was kind of a ghost town by Friday. So they had the media chasing them around. So they were distracted by that. And then it turned out Barry, the state trooper who I met, he drove some of them around, and they were being chased by the media. So were they doing their job? And they were calling in from payphones, and it just seemed like a real mess. So I have that document that he wrote, if you'd like to see it. It's pretty interesting.
I'm sure we'd all like to see it. Okay. Thanks a lot, Tammy, and I hope you'll forgive me. It's lovely to see you here, and we're glad to have you. Okay, we got to call on Kathy Barnes next. Kathy, you need to unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I live in rural Michigan, and I borrowed a Geiger counter from my friend Corey and Carrie, and did readings here and there. And one of the things that surprised me was the elevated radiation where there were chemical farms. That you could smell chemicals. Non-organic farmers use fertilizers and chemical sprays that are quite smelly. And that registered high radiation. So I'm wondering, I do know that Consumers Energy at one time dumped near where I live, and the water here registers radioactive. So I think it went into the aquifer, but I think they might have dumped reactor coolant water when they were changing their generators out. That's what Mary Sinclair thought. Anyway, I wonder if you know of any incidences where the nuclear industry is kind of dispersing radioactive waste into agricultural products, like fertilizers and chemicals. And there is a terribly high incidence of cancer here too. I mean, everybody's got it or has died from it. It's just really high cancer, and that is breast cancer, lymphoma, and different cancers of the blood and brain, and skin cancer. So anyway, I just wondered, are they doing something to put radioactivity into farm chemicals? That's my question.
I have seen radioactive batteries. I know that they put radioactive materials in your exit signs that illuminate buildings, and it's also in our smoke alarms. I have not heard agricultural products. I did hear Florida, in their brilliance, is paving their roads with radioactive materials, as is Japan. So there's so much waste. They're trying to find ways to use it, and you really should not. I mean, the question is, what sign do you put on the side of a dry canister for, centuries from now? Do not open, dangerous. So it's just ludicrous. I can look into that and get back to you if you want to send me your email or put your, I've been putting my email in the chat. So if you want to email me, I hope not.
All right.
I would like to make a little contribution here. About 3 months ago, we had Justin Noble, who wrote the book Petroleum 238. And in this book, everybody should read Petroleum 238. It's a pun on plutonium 238. And he explains how very, very radioactive all petroleum products are. And they find these wells by using a Geiger counter because the oil itself is radioactive. And so it's not the least bit surprising that petroleum products are radioactive. They are. I got rid of my gas stove because the gas is a petroleum product, and I was letting radioactivity out into my kitchen every time I turned it on. And so I'm not supposed to be answering the questions, but that Petroleum 238 by Justin Noble will answer this kind of a question about the radioactivity in petroleum and petroleum products. Okay, thank you, Kathy. We're going to call on Connie. Connie's another very well-informed person. She is in ONFN, which is the Ohio Nuclear Free Network. And she's a good friend of ours. And so, Connie, please ask your question.
This was a great presentation. Thank you. First of all, I did put in the chat. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Michael Ketterer and Joe Mangano? Yes. Okay. I would like a little more information about what the American Dental Association put out. So if you can maybe put that in the chat. You said it was United Healthcare. It's outrageous.
Yeah, I thought I had the letter here. I will, I mean, if you Google it, it's all over. I couldn't, the news always, I follow a lot of strange news links, and that one popped up on my feed as well. So if you even just Google American Dental Association bans lead aprons, I'm sure 5 or 6 different newspapers will pop it up. But my healthcare provider, United Healthcare, actually mailed us a letter. And I should have it. I'd like to put that in the back of the book because, again, it's just deflecting, trying to dodge the guilt, the blame, anyhow.
And the last thing is, I don't know if you know about this. I don't know if you know about the results. Are the results available on the DNA studies, the TMI DNA studies? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what studies?
The DNA studies.
They haven't done any. If they do, they hire their own universities, and if they do them like in 1999. University. I just got one because I was fighting with the Agency for Toxic Substance and Disease because they denied my petition like 5 years ago. And she goes, "Well, the university," and I think it was Pittsburgh. I do have that. She just emailed me. I had to ask her. I go back. I thought you were going to send this to me. So in 2025, she gets it back to me, and it was done 2 years ago. So again, it's still. It's better than what was done in 1990, but when the kids guard the cookie jar, or if they don't look, they're not going to find anything. So I have that study if you want to see that one, Connie. Just shoot me an email.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And of course, from Cindy Folkers and other people, we get the meme, the genome is the real dosimeter. So, okay, I'm going to call on the Director of Nuclear Energy Information Service. David, please ask your question.
Thanks, Jan. A brief comment and then the question. On your view graph about what can go wrong at nuclear reactors, I would urge you to include war as one of the things that would have a negative effect. And I bring that up because more and more with our chuckle-headed idiots in government that want to sprinkle small modular reactors around the world in places like Ukraine, Poland, Romania, Taiwan, South Korea, all potential war zones. We are literally spreading the opportunity for, horrific nuclear contamination. So just a little suggestion. My question was actually triggered by a comment from Maria Frisbee, who I assume is a resident near TMI, mentioning that there were many plant and animal studies done in the area around TMI. And I'm going to ask you if you can help me. I remember a woman, in her day, she was legendary, who had collected plant samples and was going around showing the deformed plants, dandelions and whatnot, from 3 Mile Island. And I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. I was wondering if you might recall who I'm talking about. Unfortunately, she's dead now. And her
I
collection was
do remember,
just stupendous.
David, that was Helen Caldicott,
No,
Dr.
no,
Helen Caldicott.
no, it wasn't
No?
Helen. This was a TMI.
Her name is Mary Olson.
Okay.
She has a
Oh, right.
Smithsonian exhibition now, and I met her before she passed. She had collected flowers that were two-headed and pictures of animals and tree rings and all of that.
Right. Her name is, say it again, please.
I want to say it's Olson. I'll look it up. Hang on
Her
a second.
name is Mary Stamos.
Okay,
Stamos.
Aaron knows.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I had an opportunity to meet her once and she showed her stuff and it is jaw-dropping. So that's a very powerful visual that can be used. Thanks for rescuing me.
Oh, and speaking of Aaron Datesman, he was our expert a few months ago also. So it's wonderful to have you all here. I've been asked to send out the link to Kristen. Let's see, it was Norma. She asked me for Kristen's paper. And if you'll forgive me right now, I'm going to just take the time to put that in the chat. I hope Kristen doesn't mind just being called Kristen.
No,
Kristen's
what you
Kristen's
might want to do is just link to my website and you'll find lots of articles. You won't find the books, but you'll find lots of, at least some of the articles are on that website.
Oh, okay. You put it in the chat, right?
Let me put the website address in the chat. That'll be easier. Hang on here. Sorry.
Okay, and I did just put the link to the paper that was written in 2016 and could have been written today because it was about the nuclear renaissance. So
Yeah. Well, they've been telling the same lies since the 1970s.
right.
And the problem is, unless we can get good dosimetry data, or something like Steve Wind, who got the wind data, it's very hard to get them to listen, and they just they ignore it. So
So
they're like Trump. They repeat the craziness, and then people believe it.
I'm wondering if that anybody else has a question or wants to make a comment. And I also wonder if we could ask Norma to make a comment. Do you mind, Norma, just if I ask you to say something? Because Norma just has gotten back from Japan not very long ago, where she visited the people who won the Nobel and others, because Norma is a professor emeritus of Far Eastern Studies, and she speaks fluent Japanese. So, Norma, could you maybe?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Oh, let me see. Okay. Hi, everybody. And thank you so much. Not only to Jill, but for all of you adding so much to this gathering. As Kristen just said, I'm so struck reading about trials. I didn't meet the Nobel laureates. I was going to Fukushima, and that's what I've been working on since the disaster happened. But if I study this history of anti-nuclear power plant trials going back to the 70s, it's exactly the case. It's so abysmal to read about how much Japanese scientists and technical people knew then, and they were immediately translating what came out in the US and the critical studies of the reactor safety study, for example. And all of that would be laid out in trials to no effect whatsoever, because, and this is an issue for all of us, and if, which is that if there's a determination to have nuclear power, whatever facts we can present can be brushed aside. And we have to figure out a way around that, to this deadly policy, which I think is more than one reason. Two obvious ones are military and immense profit. It's true in Japan. I think it's true the world over. And so the fact that we've been dealing with the same knowledge for decades now of how harmful it is something we all have to study and come to terms with. I should say one thing. Jill said something, oh yes, about Cape Cod and Pilgrim and so forth. Everyone here probably knows about the dumping of radioactive water, of the contaminated water from the crippled plants, and that began in 2023. And so citizens in those neighboring, in that area, the coastal area, have launched a lawsuit to say, okay, we couldn't prevent them from starting it, but TEPCO says it's going to go on for 30 years. We have to do everything we can to stop this nonsense, since there are alternatives, first of all. So I'd like all of you to know about that. There's going to be a first demonstration in Tokyo on April 26th, which is the anniversary of Chernobyl. And I was kind of involved in helping people figure out what posters would make sense in English and so forth. So please keep your eyes open for that. Yes, there's a talking about evidence and dosimetry. Dosimetry, as I understand it, is a pretty tricky business. So much of the world's nuclear sufferers, including now the people of Fukushima, have suffered from the way the lifespan study of the A-bomb survivors was conducted. So much effort has gone into dosimetry reconstruction. So not actual measurements of anything, of bodies, although they have an extraordinary supply of biological samples frozen, like freeze-dried chocolate bars, as shown once. It seemed pretty disrespectful. Anyhow, that study has because it doesn't recognize long-term low-dose exposure. Almost all exposures, even when demonstrated, are deemed to be too low to cause the diseases that have happened. And so right now, very important is the trial in Tokyo with TEPCO as a defendant of children who contracted thyroid cancer who were living in Fukushima at the time of the disaster. And it's a very tense trial. You see these young people, you know, who, as they are just on the verge of adulthood, are probably going to have a hard time with employment, with getting mortgages for their homes, with health insurance, because oddly, as good as Japanese public health insurance is, it excludes cancer for the most part. So these kids who already have cancer, you know, diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Now, here's the thing to keep in mind. There are experts on the other side who will say, yes, we know there's a cancer cluster, close to 400 recognized right now, which is extremely high for pediatric thyroid cancer. We know there's a cluster, but there's no evidence. It is hard for us to believe, hard for us to think is a literal translation. I can't understand that specialist grown-ups can speak like this. It is hard for us to think that these thyroid cancers could have been caused by the Fukushima nuclear disaster. The plaintiff's lawyer says, it's on you to show what could have caused this cancer, thyroid cancer cluster, if it's not the disaster, since these kids were all living there at the time. So I'll stop there. Happy to answer any questions. You can also, I'll put my email in the chat too. And thank you so much for this occasion, for organizing it too, NEIS. Okay.
Thank you, Norma. Do you have any comment, Jill?
Thank you, Nora, for your work in Japan. Do you know director Ito, who did Silent Fallout?
Oh, yeah.
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 They're doing a symposium in November in person and on Zoom. So I'll be speaking there. Joe's going to be speaking. I think Mary's some of us are trying to go over there. So there's a lot going on. And I think Mary Dickinson's in the room. She's doing something in New York City. Mary, are you here? Again, to raise awareness. Mary.
Are you here, Mary Dickinson? Oh, go ahead.
I thought I saw her. I can post what she's doing. Is anyone in New York? It's a free one-person show. And I think it's this weekend.
I went to a seminar today for the Scottish CND, and Ian Fairley talked at that seminar, and he was complaining that people are not aware of many of the things that happened because of Chernobyl. And Lothian is a place in Scotland, and he had this graph. Can you see my screen now? This is the Down syndrome babies in Lothian, Scotland, and the peak is when the cloud from Chernobyl came over Lothian. Is it showing?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to show this because it was something that was in a seminar this morning from the Scottish CND. Okay. Well, it is 20 minutes to 9 here, 20 minutes to the hour, and we've gone over 10 minutes. If anybody else has something any burning question or something that they really feel important that they want to share right now, we could do that. But it would be up to Jill if she wants to stay longer. Go ahead, Jill.
I just wanted to let everyone know, I put in the chat as many things as you requested. So when David and Jan send you the chat later, you can see the notes. I put in the clip from the TV show by Walt Disney, Our Friend the Atom. I put the PDF documentation of Al Keener's report of on the ground testing, water, grass for radiation, etc. So, and my email's there too. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to.
This has been a lot of fun. Oh, Roxanne, there. Would you mind asking your, making your comment or whatever it is you have to say right now?
Yes, I'm the person who had a resolution before the Washington State Democratic Democratic Convention in June last year. And we battled. The resolution passed out of 2 legislative districts. One changed the wording slightly, so we had 2 to debate. And the people who were pro-nuclear were saying things that were not correct and getting away with it. And we were trying to be honest and tell the truth. But you've said some things here tonight that would be very helpful in a debate like that. And I would recommend that every single person who's part of a Democratic organization, feel free to contact me. I put my email in the chat, and I'd be happy to share that resolution. Let's get resolutions going as much as possible in every state party. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh, and
Roxanne.
can you share the Down syndrome link?
Oh, I don't know. That was in a webinar this morning that came out of Scotland. And if I get it, that it was recorded, and they will send out the link to the recording, and then I could send it to you. I have to make a note that, did you put your email in the chat?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. I'll find it and send it to you.
And again, for anybody who needs it, it's ROXANNE 070 at outlook.com.
So it's
And
just your first name.
yeah, just my first name and 070 at outlook.com.
We have a question from Leona Morgan. Good to see you,
Hi,
Leona.
Leona.
Welcome. Unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see if I can show my face. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you.
Hi, no. Hi, Leona.
Yeah, thanks. That is a compliment to be called Norma. I just wanted to highlight,
Oh, sorry.
you can't have plutonium without uranium. And right now we're experiencing a uranium boom in the Southwest, Intermountain Region West. New proposals for new mining, all kinds of mining, and then also uranium milling, which uses lots of water. So I just want to highlight all of that. And if folks are interested in supporting, I'll try to send out info, but I think wherever you live, if you're close to a uranium place, I would just ask folks to support those issues as well. Thanks. That's all. Thank you for the great presentation, and thank you, NEIS.
Would you be willing to put your email or contact info in the chat? That would be helpful.
Sure thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and we need to tell people about HALNO. Could you just kind of tell us what HALNO is, Leona? Are you gone?
He was on mute. There we go.
It's a campaign. HALNO is a campaign regarding uranium transport from the Grand Canyon. So a new mine started. A new mine, I mean, it was licensed in 1986, but it just started last January. The price of uranium went over $100 a pound last January, and it hasn't done that since 2007. So
Hey, girl.
at the Grand Canyon, the mine started. They're driving it to the only mill in the country, which is in the Four Corners area called White Mesa Mill. And so we're fighting the transport because the mine is on Havasupai lands, the mill is on Ute lands, the transport is through my people's land, so which we call Dinepikea. But the issue I think to highlight as well is the uranium mill, because this is the one mill in the country. And so the US government is basically using it for everything. So they're developing rare earth elements. And so they're planning to really expand the mill for rare earth elements, uranium, and it's basically serving as a waste dump for the whole world. So HALNO has been working on this issue for all of these issues for a long time, but now we're experiencing this boom. So there's a lot of other mines coming up that people in the Southwest, everybody's kind of scrambling and trying to figure out how to work together. And then on top of that, the other thing is RECA. So there's a lot of people still trying to get RECA reintroduced into Congress. And I know Union of Concerned Scientists, Lily Adams in your neighborhood, Jill, is working on that. I was just at a meeting today about RECA. And so I think that's another area where folks can plug in to support. But the uranium stuff, it's a lot. I live in New Mexico. We have LANL, WIP, Urenco. Everything wants to expand, and we don't have enough people to fight. But we're doing a training this weekend. I can put some information in the chat. So, but that's for youth. If you guys have young people, we're doing a youth training on nukes. So I would love to see some young people there. If anyone knows any folks that want to learn, please share the info. I'll put in the chat.
And there's a question about what is RECA, the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act, which has it's been attempted to be modified to include the many uranium victims who have been left off over the years, such as the Trinity downwinders. And unfortunately, the Congress being what it is, could care, at all about radiation victims.
Okay, unless somebody else has a burning issue, I think we will turn it back over to Dave to close out the session. So Dave, you go ahead.
Well, thank you, Jan. I want to thank all of you who showed up tonight. This was a extremely lively exchange, which is what the whole purpose of this program is. It's an opportunity for you folks to actually have dialogue, ask questions of experts, and that's why we've been doing this now for almost 4 years. We intend to do it every last Thursday of the month. Our next session will be on Thursday, May 29th. We have 5 Thursdays in May this year, so it'll be the last Thursday on the 29th. And I don't recall offhand that we've firmly established an expert, but you'll be getting notices.
Oh yeah, we have.
Oh, we do.
Definitely, it's Paul Gunter.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes, Paul Gunter is going to speak. Yes.
I've heard of him. Yes. Okay, I stand corrected. We have a speaker for the 29th of May. So we hope you'll join us, and actually feel free to send our announcements around, get other people to participate in this, particularly elected officials, if possible, or media. It would be nice to have them joining us occasionally too. They could learn a little bit. And if you think this program is worth supporting, you might consider supporting NEIS as well. So on that note, we're going to close out. I want to thank you, Jill, for being with us tonight. It was an exceptional presentation and dialogue. I hope you enjoyed it as well. And I'll ask you to stick around a few minutes as we wrap up here. So thank you all. Watch your emails for the chat. We will be including the Chernobyl list of shorts on YouTube. There are 10 of them that we thought you might find very interesting and compelling. So you'll get that tonight. And those of you who would like a copy, an advanced copy of tonight's presentation, we will make the Zoom link available before it goes up on YouTube in the next couple of weeks. So shoot us an email at this address and we will get it out to you. All right, so happy Earth Month to you all. Appreciate you joining us tonight. Jill, thank you again very much. And we will hopefully see you all in May.
Could you hold the chat for just a moment? I haven't finished with it.
Yes, so I'll leave it open for a little bit for folks to.
Is Roxanne by chance still on? I missed her.
I don't know if she is or not.
I am still on. Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
Sure.
Yes.
I believe you were speaking about language